Good morning. How are you all today? And welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I want to talk for a minute about applying martial arts principles to preparedness. A lot of people are interested in martial arts. A lot of people are enamored with martial arts. Some people know about it, most don't. But most people don't realize that the reality of martial arts is much different than what you see on the screens or what you see dancing around at the local pajama dancing strip mall center, right? Uh, there are a few people who are legit, and there's a whole lot who aren't, but the principles is what makes the difference. I got a couple of things, by the way, from a friend of mine, Mike Morton, who many of you on Patreon know, but I put a couple. You have a couple of things to thank him for today. He said something, or he posted something on his Facebook page that I copied, I stole, and I put it up for today's thought on the Patreon uh, channel. And it shows an iceberg, and of course above the water it says black belt, and then below it it lists all the things that go into uh, actually earning a legitimate black belt. And I'm going to tell you right now, and the reason that I know this, I used to publish a martial arts magazine many years ago, and I know the difference. Uh, there are some legitimate black belts, and most people who strap on a black belt are not. Okay, but then he also sent me something that he said he just texted it to me, and is that yeah okay. Yeah, I got another one from him while I'm doing this because I told him I was going to use this previous one as a stepping off point for this video. Now to let you know a little bit about Mike, he's a friend of mine. He's former military and retired law enforcement in the United States. He currently lives in Colombia, the country way down south, and travels around training many of the Latin America police and military special units. He came out of one of the real legit martial arts systems, Bushido Khan, which was established by my very good friend, my late friend Jim Harrison, and he knows what he's talking about. So I'm going to read what he sent me, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about it and how we apply that, and then I'm going to tell you how I also have kind of said something like this, the way that I train people, and then tell you how it applies to. Uh, Let me get this back here. I'm having to do this. See, I'm doing this on my old phone, and I'm having to do this on my. I'm having to read this on my new phone. So you know me. I'm not that technologically advanced. So okay, I'm going to read this, and then we'll get to it, and you'll see. I'm going to explain how this applies and how you can apply it to preparedness. Okay. All right. Here he starts. He says, he says, I recently got this from a guy he trained with, and it lays out his philosophy of combatives pretty well. So he says, thought you might enjoy it. And I did. He says, your kid can solve 5 times 7 equals 35 in seconds, right? But imagine if instead of learning multiplication, they had to memorize thousands of individual equations, such as 5 times 57 equals 285, or 78 times 96 equals 7,488, or 12 times 48 equals 576. I didn't check that. I'm assuming that those are right. When faced with 52 times 68, they'd be completely lost because they never learned how multiplication actually works. This is exactly why 95%, oops, what did I do? I hit just something that, come on, man. Okay. I'm still jacking around with my iPhone. I hit things and things happen, and I go, oh my gosh. Okay. This is exactly why 97% of self defense training fails when you need it most, and I will agree with that 100%. Most martial arts force you to memorize hundreds of specific techniques, which is silly. You know? Such as your wrist lock works when grabbed exactly this way. You ever seen these phonies do their presentations? You know, they go out someplace and they're going to do a presentation in order to drum up business, right, for their school. and he get up and say, okay, now do this, and the guy will go up there and do something totally different, and no, do this. Matter of fact, I'll tell you one time I went into I went past a guy that I knew. I just happened to drop in, and he was given a self-defense for women class, and his assistant hadn't shown up that day. And so he knew me, and he says, Greg, would you mind? Greg is how everybody knew me. Would you mind coming out and helping me with this? And I said, well, sure. I was going to be his uki, which is the word for, the guy that plays attacker. And I said, well, sure. He says, okay. And so we're in this room, probably, I don't know, 50 or 60 women, right? All excited, gonna learn, gonna be empowered, gonna learn all about self-defense and everything. And he says, okay, now just go ahead and put me in a choke. So I put him in a choke, the way that I choke, the way I teach how to choke. And he went, no, not like that. Just a second. Well, I could have put him out in about a half a second. But he said, no, do it like this. Well, he positions my arm in a way that nobody would do that, right? But it's easy to get out of, and it's going to make him look good in front of all these women, and they're going to leave feel empowered. And the first time they have to use it, they're going to be extremely disappointed. So that's what he's saying. The wrist lock works when grabbed exactly this way. That's right. The arm bar works from this precise stance. Right. The shoulder lock works against this specific angle. Now, there will be some that will say, no, if you're really good, you can apply these things all different ways. I'm not going to get into that. I used to use, and those are people who come out of sport fighting as opposed to real life violence. Okay. I used to use a lot of the UFC tapes. When UFC started way back when, I knew some of the guys that fought in those. And I thought, God, okay. I hear about UFC being like no rules and no holds barred and everything like that. And I said, bull, man. I mean, they're not doing half of what they ought to be doing. And they did put a lot of restrictions on him. Ken Shamrock told me about the restrictions they put on him when he was fighting Royce Gracie. And some other people told me some things too. So no, it wasn't, I'm not going to get into, let me just say that the UFC back then is not what people thought it was. Now, nowadays, a little bit different. Okay. But let me continue with this. But real predators don't attack according to your training script. Yes, that's right. How about that? When that terrifying moment arrives and your family's lives depend on your response, cycling through memorized methods becomes impossible, and the consequences are unthinkable. That's right. That's exactly right. I've watched highly trained martial artists freeze in simulated attacks because what they memorized didn't match the reality they faced. What if instead of memorizing hundreds of individual techniques, you could understand the simple underlying principle that governs all effective self-defense? How about that? Could there be one thing, one technique that works every time? What kind of? Okay, we'll get to that. Just as understanding multiplication allows you to solve any multiplication problem, understanding this one principle allows you to neutralize or control any attacker, regardless of your size, strength, or the position you find yourself in. This principle is so fundamental yet so powerful that once you grasp it, you'll immediately generate effective control from any position. What is it, you ask? Closest available weapon to your closest available target. Weapon being anything. Anatomical weapon, blunt trauma tool, or bladed penetrating tool. They left this out, but I will also say gun. Okay. That's all right. And so I told Mike I was going to use this because when I taught in my system, now I started out in traditional systems, Shotokan and the hard styles, things like that, and but I had a life that allowed me to see whether these things worked or not. Okay, in actual life, not in sport fighting, most of them, you weren't gonna be effective if you did what you were taught in these kinds of BS schools. And so I won't go through the whole story, but I developed my own system. But Jim Harrison developed his own system. Ronin Jutsu, Bruce Lee just developed his own system. All of us, because we saw that the traditionally taught martial arts were not effective in modern day fighting. Okay? Certainly not the ones that I'd been involved in. So when I developed my own system, I started with teaching them the targets on the human body. The target meaning those places that you can strike or do whatever that you can attack that will have varying degrees of effectiveness. Everything from momentary stop, to maximally effective. And I won't say any words about that because YouTube doesn't like it. And the body is just one big stack of targets. But most people don't know this. Now you walk into any dojo, dojang, kun, anything like that, and most of them will have these anatomical targets hanging on the wall, right? And most most of the senseis don't have a clue as to what all of them are. It's cool. It's a martial arts target map, and it makes it look very, very secretive. And this and this and this and this, but they don't understand it. Well, I taught my students out of Gray's Anatomy. Every student had to get a Gray's Anatomy and learn the body. They learned the skeletal system. They learned the muscular system. They learned syndesmology. They learned kinesiology. They learned all this. They learned how the body was put together. Because if you don't know how something is put together and how it works, you're not going to know how to best take it apart. I use the example of it's like blowing a bridge. Okay, if you don't understand how the bridge is constructed, you can pack all the C4 on it you want to, and light her up and blow it. It may or may not come down. It'll make a mess, but it may or may not come down. As opposed to if you understand how the bridge is constructed, where the stress points are, where the load points are, you can shape your charges and you can place your charges in such a way that you can bring it down with the as little as possible, right? And so that's what you want to do. You need to know how the human body is put together. Don't worry, I'm getting how this applies to preparedness too. So the first thing I would teach them, and I didn't teach them all at once. Each level, each came is what I call it, level or degree, and there was 33 in mine. That your first game, you would learn maybe 4 targets, and then you would learn a weapon, like maybe there's different weapons used in martial arts. So for instance, the Okinawan and Japanese, they use a hard fist where they usually strike with the first 2 knuckles because they're aligned, right? And the Chinese system, most of them do it differently. They hit with the last 3 knuckles because those are aligned. You see how that middle knuckle sticks out? If you hit with that first, you're going to bust a knuckle. Well, I use both, and I call this is a penetrating fist, and this to go for soft tissue. You never want to hit a hard tissue with those first 2 knuckles. That's for soft tissue, a penetrating fist. Or the other that I use, if we use this, it's a concussive fist, and that is very often used against hard tissue, like the head. Though there are other weapons better used against the head, palm, heel, and many other things. But anyway, I would teach them a few targets. I'd teach them a few weapons, and then a couple of weapons delivery. Now, the reason that I did that, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that, was that I explained that I am not a believer in a bunch of pre-choreographed response sequences in a fight. That's just exactly what this guy was saying in there. Okay, if the attack doesn't happen exactly the way you've trained for, well, you're not ready. And so, and besides that, if you've watched many things, too many places teach like, okay, when you're attacked, then you do this and you do this and you do 19 things. The only problem is the guy wasn't in the original position. See, after about the first 2 or 3, every response you make changes his position, your relative positions, and it's a dynamic situation that you need the ability to understand as it progresses. And so I don't believe in we didn't train on choreographed response sequences. If somebody hits you, now there's a couple of things you can go 1, 2, 3 very quickly, But beyond that, it just doesn't work. I mean, it looks good in demonstrations. It looks good in the dojos. It impresses everybody who's come to take the free class to see if they want to join your dojo. But no, it's not real. And so when it comes down to it, so we teach them the weapons, the place on the other person to access, or the targets, and then we tell them a weapon, and then we teach them weapon delivery. Okay, how to get that weapon to that target. So I put it in this way. Start with target recognition. When it comes out, of course, you do this very quickly. It gets to the point you just see it, and it all comes together after training and experience. Experience is the real teacher. Training allows you to learn from the real teacher, which is experience. So it's target recognition. There's a target, and the reason that I use the UFC fights as a training for my people is not to show what they should do, but to show what these guys weren't doing. And the first level white belt, after a month or so, I'd say, what is this guy? What should he be doing? What targets are he not accessing on his opponent? They'd be able to rattle them off. They go, and of course they weren't doing it because I don't know if they weren't trained that well, but they were precluded from doing it by the rules of the UFC. Okay, but in the real world, there are no rules. That's the difference. Once there's a rule, it's not real. So anyway, it's a matter of what happens. You target recognition. There's these targets, and the more advanced you get, the more targets you know. Pretty soon, the opponent, instead of being one big scary guy, he just becomes a stack of targets that you say, okay, which one do I want? So target recognition, target acquisition. How can I access that? Can I access that target? Which targets can I access? Now, the next step is weapons selection. Which weapon is appropriate for that target? See, is it a penetrating fist? Is it a concussive fist? Is it a knife hand? Is it an elbow? Is it a knee? What is it? Is it a headbutt? And then weapons delivery. So you have target recognition, target acquisition, weapon selection, and weapons delivery. And those just become natural after a while. And it becomes natural the more you use it. Simple as that. Now, how do we apply this? By the way, Mike, thanks for sending me that to give me the idea for this video today. And how does that apply to preparedness? Well, people who stay within the guidelines of do this, 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 staying within a formula are inhibited by the parameters of that formula. I'll just say that. Okay. And so whenever you're up against a situation, and most situations in life are dynamic. Could be a problem at work, right? Could be a personal problem with somebody. Could be a work problem. You could be attacked on the street. Or it could be the walls come tumbling down. The grid collapses. Whatever, like in my books. By the way, I'll show you. Those of you who didn't know, I wrote the Stonemont series, by the way, and I'll show you how to get them in a minute if you haven't read them. But applying these things to preparedness, it is recognizing the problem. Okay, now many people would call this the OODA loop, right? Observe, orient, decide, act. It's kind of the same thing. But you want to be as adept at as many skills as possible in life and in preparedness. Because the more skills you're adept at, the more choices you have. What weapon to use, or what tool to use in that instant. The fewer skills you have, the less understanding you have about the world, and that includes the understanding of people, certainly. The more restricted you're going to be in your ability to choose the right weapon, right? So, in preparedness, what is the target? Well, the target is survival, right? What the target could also be the problem. What's the problem? do I have something that can I address that? Can I acquire that target? Can I address that problem? If I can't, then I have to find another way to do it. If I can't do it head on, I've got to find another way to do it. Weapon selection. What do I have that's going to allow me to address that problem? What do I have? And that's weapon selection. And then delivery. How do I apply that skill towards solving my problem? Does that make sense? I hope it did. I just realized I had my glasses. I don't need my, well, I did to read that. Yeah, it's healing up nicely, isn't it? For those of you who think, well, what's he telling me about this? He obviously lost a fight. No, I had eye surgery, and it's coming along nicely. The better to see you. So just think about that. And my whole book series really is about that. All of the decisions that go to. Would you like to see the books? I will show them to you. The Stonemont series, my series of books. There are 7 of them. I'm working on the 8th. The Reversion, the Revival, the Renewal, and Appeal to Heaven, the Blessings of Freedom, Hostages to Fortune, and the most recent one, On Wings Like Eagles. And the whole series, it's a story about a family who, as a result of their own preparedness, was able to, continue living very well after the collapse of everything. And not just that, but help other people and rebuild community. And there are so many lessons in here. But it's all about those things. What's the problem? How do we address that problem? Do we have the skills? Do we have the tools? Do we have the weapons to address those problems? If not, how do we develop those? And then how do we apply those to the problem to solve it, right? It's a great story. There are more lessons in here than you'll be surprised. You'll be amazed at how much you'll learn. You can get them a couple of ways. You can get them through Amazon. That link's down below. Or the better way is to get them directly from me through our website, stonemont.us. That link is also down below. And when you get them directly from me, I get to sign them for you and write a little note in there for you. And you get a nice discount because when we send them as a set, which you can't get through Amazon. You can also get it on Kindle and Audible on Amazon. Can't get those from me, but when you get it from me, you can buy the whole series as a set, which allows us to give you a nice discount because it costs us a lot. We save money on the packaging and handling and postage and everything like that. We pass that savings on to you, so you get the whole set at a discount. Plus, I throw in the Stonemont notebook, which I use mine all the time, and you'll learn a lot and you'll love the story. And if you haven't read them, I might suggest that be the next thing you look into. Those links are down below. So just think of it that way. Thanks, Mike, for the idea. But it's just a matter, and the more, just like with martial arts, or just like with fighting, it's the same with preparedness or anything else in life. The more you do it, the more comfortable you are with it, the more you develop, the more skills you develop, the more you see how those different skills interlace, right? And can be used either independently or cooperatively. I know I'm getting a little bit complicated compared to most preparedness videos, right? Well, that's us at integrative preparedness, because everything's integrative. Okay, all right. Hope you got something out of that. Have a good day, or as we say, hago, and remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. And I'll probably see you tomorrow.